Out of sheer exasperation, you finally say, please just tell me. Please, I beg you, just tell me. Tell me what to say. Tell me how to say it. Tell me how to be, and I will do it. You want the arguments and the anger and all of it to end. You just can't figure it out. So you figure that you will just ask for the right answers to the test. So many of you say, why can't they change? So let me ask you this. You can't change your personality that much. How do you think they will? Let's say, as an example, let's say you're an extroverted and agreeable person. That's your personality. So could you switch it up and be more antagonistic, introverted and narcissistic tomorrow, or in a week, or in a year? Yeah, that's what I thought. Probably not. Had a great Q&A recently with great questions from my healing community. You ought to come join us if you're interested in a deeper dive on healing. That link is in the video notes, and we have these monthly Q&As. But once again in that Q&A, the age-old question of why don't they change come up? Or rather, can they change? Narcissistic personalities are more rigid than ours because it's a little bit maladaptive. You got that. But let's turn the question around, because it can really help you in your sort of progression towards radical acceptance. If you look at work by folks like Sandra Brown and her colleagues, she suggests that the personality style that is at greater risk of getting sucked into narcissistic or psychopathic relationships is the agreeable style. And that makes sense. Agreeable personalities are modest, empathic, humble, trusting, they follow the rules, they give of themselves to others, have lots of equanimity, they're easy to get along with, they compromise. It's as close to an empath personality style as we have in our personality models, like the Big Five model. And we know that narcissists target empaths, mostly because they know they can get away with a lot of stuff with them. So to all of you out there who are agreeable, let me ask you this. How easily would you be able to start becoming unempathic, manipulative, entitled, arrogant, attention-seeking, and hostile? Now, I know that may sound odd, especially on this channel, because those aren't good things to many of us. But we also know those qualities result in people being more likely to make more money or become leaders. Right? If you were to try to be that person, so let's say you tried to be that antagonistic person, roll into the grocery store tomorrow and start yelling at the clerk for not moving faster, or walk around and tell everyone how great you are, or monopolize conversations, or interrupt people, or put hostile comments on people's social media feeds, or take advantage of people, or only care about superficial qualities, or you gaslight your friends. How easy would that be for you to start doing that? How would it feel? Let me try it this way. Maybe all of you aren't watching this aren't agreeable. Maybe some of you are introverted. So let's try that. Introversion is a personality style. Can you change that? Some of you introverts out there are thinking, yeah, I could step out of my comfort zone, go to a few more parties or networking events, talk to a few more strangers. Yeah, I believe you. Yes, you could. And how would you feel afterwards? I'm guessing tired, depleted. Given a choice, would you become a social butterfly and go out 3 or 4 nights a week? Probably not, but you could probably rally from time to time. So, if you can't change your agreeable personality to an antagonistic or narcissistic one, if you can't change your introverted personality to an extroverted one, I really want you to stop and think about the reality or likelihood of the narcissistic person in your life making a change and becoming agreeable and empathic and self-reflective. I know, I can hear you all the way here. Some of you are thinking, well, Dr. Ramani, don't be like that. Being agreeable is good. It's healthy. So agreeable people shouldn't have to want to change. They wouldn't or shouldn't, right? Okay. But we also know, and the research shows us this, agreeable people don't make as much money. And folks like having enough money, right? I agree that from a psychological perspective, agreeable is good for us. I love me agreeable people, right? It is a pro-social trait. It is associated with greater relationship health. It is good for our mental health. It's good for our physical health. It means you cultivate more social support. But it also makes you a greater target for a narcissistic person. And in the long run, being agreeable may also be risky, because all of those sweet, agreeable people out there, you also tend to blame yourselves for what happens in a narcissistic relationship, rather than recognizing that this one's on the narcissist. So you may be thinking, well, is this all subjective or even a value judgment? Does narcissism have its good qualities as well? I don't see it that way. I don't see how being unkind, dismissive, manipulative, or unempathic to other people is ever good for anyone. But given the incivility in the world today, I'm guessing that there's a lot of people out there who disagree with me. The fact is, narcissistic people are really efficient because they don't care about other people and they don't waste time on doing things or helping people or doing anything that doesn't forward their cause, even if other people need their help. They're really good at being negotiators because they can be bullies. They're very manipulative. That also helps when you're doing negotiating as well. Narcissistic people are willing to do what it takes to succeed, even if that means taking advantage of or manipulating other people. And as you can imagine, they succeed. They make lots of money and they kind of run the world. Lots of people would say, well, those seem like good things if you could do all that and run the world. In fact, one could argue that the qualities that comprise narcissism are a veritable modern-day guide to business and professional success. So maybe narcissistic people have as little incentive to change as the agreeable people do. In fact, it is us unfortunate introverts who may be the most incentivized to change because kind of across the board in the research, extroverts fare better. But as a dyed-in-the-wool introvert here, I am good. Me, cat, TV, taken, I'm golden. And if I never again go to another party, I'm fine. It's just easier for me and less exhausting. But I know I can't get away with that in my life. But I also know once a month is about all the heavy social interaction I can handle. And maybe that's that. When you can't understand why, or wonder, why can't the narcissist change? Maybe the easiest way to understand that is to ask the same question of yourself. Can you change your personality, or would you want to? Narcissistic personality is more rigid, so change is much harder. And it's hard enough for the rest of us. I put it this way because lots of people out there assume they can and will change. At least the introverts can show up to the party. You know why they often show up? Because they have empathy and they know it would matter to their friends. But the narcissistic people don't have the empathy as an incentive. The money and the success, though, may be an incentive again for them to not change. Thinking about it this way is a major driver to foster radical acceptance. If you can see it this way, it may be easier for you to radically accept, not from a place of sad resignation, oh, I guess they're not going to change, but, oh, I get it. I can't stop being agreeable. They can't stop being narcissistic. I hope you all get this. And to all of those agreeable introverts out there, I do love you. Do not change a thing. But really think on this, right? Our personalities, they'd be hard for us to change them too. The healthier the personality, the more movement there is for change, right? The healthier we are, we can say like, okay, I need to get out a little bit more. My friends want to see me. But that introvert will come home and say, oh my, am I exhausted, right? They'll push themselves out of empathy, but that doesn't mean they're going to start going out multiple nights of the week. The hardest part for people who are in narcissistically abusive relationships is them thinking, why can't they change the part that's so mean to me and other people? Because it's part of their personality, right? And then you're thinking, well, if that's the case, then am I being mean by leaving? You can stay, but you're going to continue being treated badly, or you can have radical acceptance and say, if I do stay, I got to understand that this is how it is. But if you can see your personality and their personality in a similar way, you're going to start seeing how unlikely it is for them to change. Because just as you're not going to go out into the street and start screaming some entitled rant, they're not about to start being sort of super empathic and saying, hey, let's just talk about our feelings and be vulnerable. And yeah, if that's your experience, I completely believe that. That's not going to happen. So it's painful to think that they won't make that change for you. And the problem is for so many survivors, they're thinking, well, maybe it's me, and maybe I have the ability to change their personality. Could a narcissistic person make you less agreeable? No. So why would you be able to do that for them? I know what some of you are thinking. I know I am not supposed to call the narcissist out and tell them that I think they're narcissistic. But how do I have the conversation about their narcissistic behavior? If you've watched this channel long enough, you know one of the fundamental truths about narcissism and narcissistic relationships. You really can't call them out. Never ever is it useful to roll up to them and say, hey, you're a narcissistic and you're a gaslighter. It's going to backfire and end up with you being called a narcissist or worse, and it will resolve nothing. Any of you who have been in couples therapy, perhaps in family therapy or workplace mediation, or even your own therapy, you know one thing for sure. Therapists are big on communication. It's meant to be the core skill of working on all relationship issues, workplace issues, family issues. And if we were better at it, well, then by golly, our relationships would work. But that whole communication groove does not work in narcissistic relationships. You could be the relationship whisperer guru, and in a narcissistic relationship, none of that is going to work. So I will tell folks, especially those who are in the early days of finally recognizing that there are some of these patterns are narcissistic, and hopefully you do detect them early, or you're finally seeing the patterns and recognizing they're consistent and can't unsee them, to slowly walk into something I'd call the narcissistic communication cave, which is kind of dark and scary, to throw that communication Hail Mary pass, the proverbial shot across the bow. It's a way of speaking your truth without calling out the narcissist. After you do this even once, you have the data, you need to make a decision or at least to get some clarity. So let's think of this as a visual. Imagine walking into a dark cave slowly, step by step. I didn't like the way you spoke to me in front of our friends. It felt disrespectful. They deny that. See, this is not the first time this has happened. I just want you to ask yourself to be aware of yourself when you talk with me. It doesn't feel good. And then they defend themselves and blame you. I just wanted you to know that I felt uncomfortable at what you did. And then they tell you that you're too sensitive. See, you're walking those steps into that cave, right? Or we can turn this around. It could be, hey, I'd love if you could join me when I go to this work party I need to go to. Well, that's stupid. I don't want to come to your work party. No, the people I work with really enjoy hearing about your travels, and I would love it if you would come with me. Why would I waste my time with that? Oh, I'd really love the company. Oh my God, I can't be bothered. Simply going in that cave, speaking your truth, taking deeper steps into the communication cave. Show you what they are about and facilitate radical acceptance. You're not going to change them. You're also not calling them out. And it shows you pretty clearly who they are if you are willing to open your eyes, call out the patterns, and really pay attention to their responses. I always feel a little uncomfortable telling people to go into the darkness of the communication cave to throw this communication bomb. Because if indeed this person is narcissistic, that your suspicions are right, it's not going to go well and you're going to get hurt. But it will be honest. And if you're really willing to see it clearly, and that's the key, it could alleviate some of that self-doubt. It's as though you want to make sure you tried everything. And because so many people doubt if they are right about another person's narcissistic patterns, throwing this communication Hail Mary pass and just walking step by step into that narcissistic communication cave, strangely enough, becomes a way to get that clarity. And stop that navel gazing of just ruminating about the patterns in the relationship and really call it out to yourself, not to them, to yourself. So what does it look like to really lob this communication bomb, to really walk into that cave? It means, and pay attention, it means calling out the behaviors and patterns and giving examples. Hey, I don't feel comfortable talking about money because whenever that happens, it turns into accusations. It's like when you told me I was a gold digger. You told me that you would contact me when you left your event. I was worried and it felt uncomfortable because I wasn't able to set the house alarm and I had an early day the next day. Or, I often feel you are telling me things are untrue when they are true, and I spend a while doubting myself and checking the texts I sent to make sure I was right. You're thinking, girl, if I said this to a narcissistic person in my life, they're going to go bonkers. Yes, they are. But doing what I'm saying means being clear about what you need. I would be grateful if you made more time, or came home for dinner a few times a week, or we did financial planning together, or I want to take this promotion and it may mean more time from you picking up the children, or I would love for us to talk more and communicate more about what we both need, or I want us to try to communicate more clearly about when you need my help because I can't guess at when you will need me. Oh, I know all of you are thinking at home, Dr. Ramani is high tonight. That's how she's making this video. Listen, I'm not high. And I'm not saying that any of what I'm telling you is going to work. I am saying that with you being clear, you can see how distorted their behavior and responses are. It becomes a lot harder to justify their behavior when you're clear and they are abusive. But you got to make sure you avoid calling out their motivations. Don't say things like, it's like you want to hurt me, or you don't care about me, or there's no way you can love me if you do this or that. They're not going to cop to it, and you have no way of knowing what their motivations are. Also, do not name their patterns. Don't say you are narcissistic, or your behavior is narcissistic, or you are gaslighting me, or you are a sociopath, or you are passive aggressive. It doesn't work, and by the time they're done, you're the sociopath, right? That's what they're going to call you. So if you do this right, and they are narcissistic, what I'm telling you to do, it won't go well. They will tell you that you're too sensitive, that you expect too much, that they did call before they left the event, and that you are the gaslighter when they didn't call. They will tell you that they are tired of how insecure you are. They will likely gaslight you even more. They will not be accountable. They will instead be really defensive. They will not take responsibility. They will rationalize their behavior. They will make excuses, and the cherry on top, they will tell you that you are a raging narcissist. So you are wondering, Dr. Ramani, are you having a little bit of a sadistic moment? Why are you suggesting that I do this? Why would you have me jump into the fire? And my answer to that is to get it out of the way. What does every shrink, coach, friend, and family member say to you about the relationship? They say, did you talk to them? Did you ask them? It feels like crap to be asked this. So let's just do it. Let's rule it out. Be clear. Don't be accusatory. Be clear. If their traditionally toxic behavior is followed up with even more toxic communication after you try to speak clearly and non-accusatorily to them, then you have confirmation. It's not you wondering. It's you communicating clearly about what you need. What isn't working, but I only want you to do it once, one time in the cave. After that once, you have what you need. If you get a defensive, tantrumy mess, then you can be pretty darn confident that your hypothesis about their antagonistic personality is spot on. You got it right. And now you can more confidently start the work of radical acceptance, realistic expectations, boundary setting, and stopping personalizing. But so many people just sit there and clutch their pearls and wonder, are they narcissistic? Aren't they? And I think a lot of people are scared to even get it confirmed. You only need to do this once. Jump into this cave once. Now, if you get back a healthy response and they say to you, hey, thanks for being clear. I'm so sorry I haven't been clear. It's not an excuse, but I let work get the best of me. And then they start communicating clearly and really take ownership. Well, then that's not narcissism, right? I know some of you are thinking, well, maybe I go into the narcissistic communication cave. There I throw the communication Hail Mary pass, and they're just having a bad day. That's why they're so defensive. Nah, you've had these suspicions for a long time. You want to go in that cave twice? You do you. You're going to get the same response. The bigger problem is that people want to share that big reveal, the, ha, gotcha. I know what gaslighting is, and that is what you are doing, or I know what narcissism is, and I've got your number. That doesn't clear up the confusion. If they are indeed narcissistic, they're going to lash back 1,000 times worse. If they are not narcissistic, you actually may really hurt them without honestly communicating clearly about what has been bothering you. The clarity helps you win on either side of this. The fact is, the word narcissism is overused. I see simplistic TikToks, people who don't get it, talking about it. So this word narcissism has lost its power and its utility as a word anyhow. It's a bucket term, right? That captures a set of patterns. And these patterns we know are not good for us. We hold the hope that the narcissistic people will change. The only way to determine that is to communicate clearly about the patterns one time and see what comes back. Use the orthodox therapist playbook of communication. And when that defensive crap comes back at you, you don't need to put yourself in harm's way anymore. No more need for direct communication with them. You can put the hope away, throw it out in the trash, stop the future faking of yourself, stop listening to theirs, and start the ground game of managing or getting out of a narcissistic relationship. Once people understand what narcissism is, they often feel stymied, and I understand that. Sometimes you need to try to do it the so-called right way, communicate directly and clearly once, and see how badly they push back. If they don't push back, then maybe you did misread the situation. If they do, well, there you go. And if all you're doing is asking for simple, healthy things and they are invalidating you, criticizing you, insulting you, then there's your answer. Listen, sometimes Hail Mary passes do go in the hoop. Sometimes they get caught, and that's great. But usually they don't. But you won't know until you try, so do it. View this clear communication exercise as a fishing expedition, a data gathering exercise, a way to test the relationship. Yes, communicating clearly can feel like walking deeper and deeper into that scary confirmatory cave. Just do it once, get the hell out of the darkness, and rule out whether or not this is a narcissistic relationship once and for all. So then you know how to proceed. But stop wondering and waiting. Because the wondering and waiting is a bit of magical thinking like, well, maybe if I don't really see it clearly, then there's still hope. You can waste years doing that. I know you have done this before. I know you have. Let's say it's in the midst of a frustration with a toxic or difficult or high conflict or narcissistic person in your life. You do this after nothing you say is working. No matter what you try, nothing works. It always ends up with you getting it wrong, with you being manipulated, with you being gaslighted, or with you being raged at. What comes next? Out of sheer exasperation, you finally say, please just tell me. Please, I beg you, just tell me. Tell me what to say. Tell me how to say it. Tell me how to be, and I will do it. You want the arguments and the anger and all of it to end. You just can't figure it out. So you figure that you will just ask for the right answers to the test. Have you ever gotten to that point when you say, just tell me what to say? Drop a comment if you've ever gotten to this point. Now let's say you do this. The difficult person in your life will then say, I'm not doing that. It wouldn't be satisfying for me to know that you're reading a script. And at that point, you just want to put your head in your hands and cry. So you may be wondering, what the hell do they want? So let's break this down. This phrase that many people find themselves saying, actually, to me, it tells me they're probably in a narcissistic relationship. But this phrase, just tell me what to say, tell me how to say it, tell me what to do. Again, a surefire sign that someone is in a narcissistic, toxic, or antagonistic relationship. It is, in many ways, a manifestation of the expectation of mind reading that so many people with narcissistic personalities have. If you really take mind reading back to a very primal space, it's really a throwback to infancy, isn't it? The baby, who doesn't know where they end and where their caregiver begins, the baby needs the caregiver or wants the caregiver to anticipate their needs for hunger or comfort or cold or warmth. And when that doesn't happen, the infant sort of panics, cries, and if all goes well, the infant is responded to quickly and the infant is soothed. Over time, the infant turns into a toddler, who turns into a child, who slowly learns how to communicate their needs, initially with gestures, and then with words, and then hopefully those needs get met, and then into an adolescent and an adult who can sometimes meet those needs themselves and otherwise learns to communicate them. That's the healthy path. But around infancy into around toddlerhood, that's where the child learns that other people can't read their mind. Listen, it's a fortuitous coincidence when everything lines up and someone does just sort of meet your needs. But we have language for a reason. And the child learns, I need to ask for what I need, and hopefully their environment meets that need. But alas, the narcissistic person is forever stuck in infancy. Read my mind. Do it the way I need. Say it the way I need. Be who I want, when I want, as I want. But, as is the hypocrisy of the narcissistic relationship, they will then, don't expect me to be consistent. Don't expect me to be there for you. Sometimes I will be, but usually I won't. That's how those relationships work. They resent that you cannot anticipate their needs. They're grandiose enough to think that people should anticipate their needs, and they are infantile enough to believe it can happen, and they are entitled enough to get mad when it doesn't happen. Obviously, this idea that somebody could read your mind and say things to you exactly the way you want is a deeply unreasonable and frankly unhealthy expectation in a relationship. This idea that, again, that you'd be able to read their mind or get it right and say it and do it and be it exactly as they want at any given moment. Now, another key dynamic of the narcissistic relationship, baiting, also complicates this. Narcissistic people always want the fight. So you couldn't get it right if you try. Most healthy people don't want a fight. Most narcissistic people do. So there's no right way at those times. All roads lead to the fight. The victimized element that characterizes most narcissism means that they are looking for the data to support their hypothesis that they are always going to be let down, because no matter what you do, they feel let down. Now remember that narcissistic people, all of them, they lack self-reflective capacity, and they lack insight into the motivations for their own behavior. Basically, they do not understand their own why. So they don't understand their need for mind reading. They don't understand their need pretty much for anything, but they go around and demand it. They walk around the world posturing as though they are well put together people. They think that they're functioning well in the world. But the contrast between the two, the utter lack of insight, but the acting as though they do have insight, means that the people who are closest to them are chronically frustrated. Yes, they want you to read their minds. Yes, their conscious mind recognizes it is not possible. No, they do not understand why they need you to read their mind. And because they lack insight and empathy, they get angry because the inadequacy in them gets activated. They know that they can't regulate themselves. And the more stressed and disappointed and frustrated and abandoned they feel, the more they expect people to read their minds. And you know, when it gets to this point, you know the rest of the story. So let's play this out. Over time, you get exhausted at not being able to communicate with your narcissistic partner because you don't want the fight. You literally wish they would hand you a script so you can say it just the way they want it, just so you can appease them. Keep in mind that this is how everyone deals with them. We are all guilty of enabling narcissistic people. Sometimes we are just too tired to try to be a communication coach or a fighter. We just need to get through the damn day. So we want the script so we can say it just the way they want it. Your conversations always end up with them being disappointed, with them always feeling let down, with them always feeling like you aren't doing it right, and then lashing out at you. You keep shifting strategies. And just as an FYI, that constant strategy shifting is a trauma-bonded state. You keep chasing the right way to do things, but there is no right way. And in trying to stay alive in these relationships, you keep trying new things to try to keep it work. But the problem is that they want different things at different times, and it can be impossible to anticipate their constantly shifting needs. Over time, you may seem more strained and anxious in your communication, and no surprise, they get annoyed about that too. They get annoyed that you are so tense and that you are so wide-eyed. Obviously you are, because you're constantly walking on eggshells and you don't know what's going to set them off. So does this happen to you in your narcissistic relationships? Please drop a comment and let me know of a time when you just didn't know what else you could do to make it right. It's sort of a trick question because there's nothing you could do. I understand exactly why you want them to tell you what they want you to say. You figure if someone just gives you the answer key, then you can get an A on the test. But remember, they don't like that either. And that, to me, is a really fascinating part of narcissism and related personality styles. They don't like that people have to walk on eggshells around them and be solicitous and be oh so careful around them. Believe it or not, narcissistic people like to think of themselves as chill and easygoing when they are not. They don't like that they have to be handled. It brings up lots of shame in them. They just feel entitled to people doing things the way they want and being able to read their minds. So you asking for a cheat sheet on how to talk with them, that's not going to work for them. It is so maddening because it's basically a maze with no way out. For people who stay in these relationships or who opt not to leave these relationships or cannot leave these relationships, this wishing for a script for them to tell you what to say, it's a painful cycle. And one I actually really hope to end just by this video because it's never going to work for you to ask for it. Remember, what is the central or one of the central mantras of the narcissistic relationship? You can't win. You can't. You can't ask for a script. You can't even figure out how to say it because even they don't know the right answer. Obviously, you can't be a mind reader, but goodness knows that you've tried. So the entire relationship is a series of guesses. And some days you get lucky and you get it right. And more days than not, you don't get it right because you can't always in life predict whether the coin is going to end up landing heads or tails. In fact, your odds of guessing a coin toss are better, since what are the odds of guessing a coin toss? 50-50. The odds of you getting it right with somebody who's narcissistic are probably lower than that. Life with a narcissistic person is like living in a cruel casino, where some days you may come out ahead, but on more days than not only are you not going to win, you find out that the games are rigged. So you can think this through inside. This idea, oh, I wish they'd just tell me what to say. Just tell me what to say. But be aware that the moment you feel the need to say this out loud to someone, just tell me what to say, tell me how to say it, tell me who to be, remember that you are now managing a toxic, difficult, and very likely a narcissistic relationship. If you say it, that you wish they would tell you what to say, they're only going to get more angry at you. And you will then have to slide instead into the thickets of radical acceptance. This is what it is. This relationship's not going to change. It's not your fault. And as long as you're in this relationship, this is it. If you can find that way to radical acceptance, and I'm not saying it feels good, but if you can, you will be less surprised, perhaps less disappointed on the daily. Though I can't make the argument that you will be less exhausted or less mentally fatigued. These relationships are upsetting. That's that. But let's take on this proverb. He who sups with the devil should have a long spoon. Now, again, like I said, more and more of the proverbs are being sent in by all of you. And you know how what I love about the proverb series is some of them are on point. Some of them are actually bad guidance. This one happens to be on point. This line about long spoons and devils originated from Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. I guess Chaucer knew something about boundaries, because that's really what this is about. The meaning of this proverb is pretty clear. If you're going to fraternize and spend time with bad people, you want to be able to keep your distance and not get too close. So really, it's about boundaries and realistic expectations. It begs the question of whether a person can keep narcissistic people in their lives by just keeping them at a distance. And I would argue that the answer to that question is yes. Now, as an exercise, I want you to take a minute, pause this video, and jot down a list of the narcissistic people in your life. Think about how many of these where you might actually be able to have a mildly functional relationship if you just don't have to rely on them. You can just get what you need and get out, and don't personalize what they say and do. Obviously, a spouse or a partner or a friend may not qualify because you need them. But there are, in fact, other less impactful narcissistic people in your life. We all have them. I did this exercise, and I recognize that there are these kinds of narcissistic folks in my life where I can see what they are and what they are about and need them professionally or for some other reason, or it would disrupt other very important relationships in my life if I blew up the relationships with these narcissists. So I don't ever let them get too close to me. I never share anything with them about myself. I do not share my vulnerabilities with them. I get in, I get out, and it's done. So pause the video and make a note of those folks. And then you can restart and get to the rest of this video. Because that's the long spoon. There are too many narcissistic folks in the world out there for any of us to realistically live a narcissist-free life. Unless you are able to stay locked in your house with a nice pet and have a few friends and don't meet their friends and don't have to work or go to the store ever, then perhaps. But the rest of us are having to sometimes sup with the devil, and we need long spoons. The key is to identify the toxic patterns as early as possible. The earlier you identify them, the better you can start taking out your long spoon. You can keep it tight and then not spin off into something deeper with them. You can pay attention to any trauma-bonded patterns like justification or trying harder to win them over. You keep that long spoon with you at all times, so when you do have to sup with them, you can keep things in a way so they don't do harm through their invalidation and their gaslighting. Now, this comes in most handy in the workplace. The ability to sup with the devil using that long spoon may be the only way that people may survive most narcissistic workplaces. Now, I got to tell you, I have yet to see a narcissist-free workplace in any place with more than a few employees. So it's about figuring out who the players are and how not to get burned, how to remain politic and get your needs met, but not get played. It does mean coming into situations in a rather cynical manner, having to assess people and situations and watch them carefully, and maybe shorten your spoon a little as trust is built, but you can do that cautiously. I find that when supping with the devil, that supping with a long spoon can work. Part of the trick is to avoid any optional conversation or activity, particularly in the workplace. The meeting is done. You don't get sucked into idle chit-chat. You don't fall into the gossip swamp. You don't share secrets on a business trip. You definitely avoid happy hour and you keep it tight at workplace social events. Forgive my language here, but don't shit where you eat. Now, another place that supping with a long spoon comes in handy is when you meet friends of friends or partners or friends of a partner or friends of a family. You may like the friend or the partner or the family member, but they may bring you into proximity of some toxic people. Again, you always need to keep that long spoon and not fall for the idea like, well, I really love my friend, so their friend must be cool. Nope. In the narcissistic world we live in now, you have to be on your toes for a while until you slowly build trust. It's an exhausting way to live, but such is the world we live in. Because narcissism seems to be creeping into so many areas of our lives, we need tools to find a way to coexist with the toxic people in our midst. It's naive to think you can eliminate all of them. Things like boundaries, taking our time to get to know someone and not doubting our instincts, heeding the red flags, and obviously carrying long spoons. We can't live in a narcissist-free world, but we can find workarounds and ways of protecting ourselves, and always keep a few of those long spoons in your back pocket. Narcissists are better fighters than the rest of us. They really are. They're great at fighting. They're like chronically like these really angry attorneys, always looking for a fight, and they always come up with these complex arguments, and by the time they're done, you're more confused than when you went into the argument and even had a very, very valid point you were trying to make. What they'll do when they start feeling that the argument is getting out of their control, your points are well made, and you've got more evidence than one would bring into a court case to make your argument, then they're going to start getting ugly with it. They're going to start pulling you into the mud. That's when the insults are going to come. Anyone out there who has been in a messy divorce with a narcissist knows how dark this can get really, really quickly. All kinds of insults, lies, defamation of your character, doing the whole flying monkey thing, drawing your family in, drawing friends in, alienating you. You know what this looks like. And when a person is drawing you into the mud, is lighting a bonfire and trying to draw you into that kind of fight, the temptation is, I am going to pull the gloves off and I am going to become as nasty a street fighter as them. To which I say, slow down. Because you cannot fight the way they fight. They have got brass knuckles, you don't. They're better at fighting and arguing because they're more antagonistic. That's just what they're good at. Remember, because of that superficiality, if you go deep, they're pretty superficial. From there, it's almost easier to fight because if you have empathy, you're like, that's actually kind of a mean thing to say. I don't want to say that. I'm not that person. So that's what you want to pay attention to, is that difference. You probably can't do it. So what do I mean by fighting fire with grace? What I mean by that is when they're insulting, doing the flying monkeys, doing the alienating, posting the nonsense on social media, and all the rest of it, when that's happening, you cannot get into the mud with them. Because all that happens then is if they isolate the little episode of you getting in the mud, and that's all somebody sees, you can imagine how somebody would interpret that. And even though it's unfair, they're not seeing the other side of the argument. So once you face down all the insults and the criticism and the psychological pummeling, you're saying, what the heck does grace look like in that condition? Grace looks like being very serene, being very remote, making sure that you do not engage them, being polite, but again, making sure you don't engage them. When you think of what grace means to any of us, it's about holding your head high, not losing control, being very self-possessed, and honestly, being very serene, very calm. Nothing aggravates a narcissist more. Because when you're serene, when you're calm, when you're not spinning around like a whirling dervish, that's when they get even more upset. Because when you start yelling and screaming, that's exactly when they're going to square up and say, what is wrong with you? You are so emotional. Do not give them the satisfaction. Do not give them that satisfaction. You almost got to get into sort of this Jedi mind space where you're like, I am going to stay calm. I'm not giving them the satisfaction. That's what I mean by fighting fire with grace. They are always, always, always going to take the low road. You can guarantee it. If you can keep it together, stay calm, stay serene. But listen, if you're dealing with something legal with them, a divorce is a great example. Make sure you document the hell out of everything. You do the deep dive. You keep the diaries. You're very clear when they screw up custody agreements. You get the forensic accounting and make sure they're not hiding money. I'm not saying that you don't want to use those techniques, but in your interactions with them, when they're, again, setting the bonfire, when they're laying down the gauntlet, the key for you is to stay calm and to stay graceful. It means avoiding doing things like defending yourself. Lots of people in these situations want to defend themselves and say, I didn't do that, and I didn't say that, and look at this, and there's this thing on my recording on my phone, la 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 la. No. When they accuse you of something, you calmly just look at them and kind of give them one of those, okay, and walk away. There is nothing more satisfying than a narcissist who's looking for a fight and can't get it. Always remember that. The beauty of fighting fire with grace is that after the whole thing is done, you don't feel like you've been sullied by the whole process. You will know that you did take the high road, that you did keep it together, that you were well regulated, that you did not insult someone like you were a 7-year-old on a playground, but rather that you stayed calm and focused. Now, you might be thinking, but I just want to punch this person in the face. I get it. I've been there. Find something else to punch. Go to a boxing gym. Go to the gym. Go do something that requires you to kind of get all of that out, but do not let the narcissist see it. And heck, you know what? If you're having that contentious a relationship with a narcissist, you may end up getting into really, really great shape. So like I said, fight fire with grace. Don't fight fire with fire. A narcissist is always, always, always going to win on the field of battle. What you need to do is take away the battle, keep it calm, and let them spin and spin and spin around, waiting for the fight that you are never going to give them the satisfaction of.